with the view. Got to be an all-time low here. All right.
Okay, so you have to read this thing.
Oh, I've got a legal note. The conservative group...
Sonny normally does this, but...
I know.
Yes.
This is our knockoff lawyer. The conservative group, Turning Point USA, has condemned the group of neo-Nazis and said they have nothing to do with the organization.
Yeah, but where was DeSantis is what I want to know.
But you let them in.
President, open your
You let them in and you knew what they were.
Right.
So you are complicit. We'll be right back.
So anyway, that, ladies and gentlemen, in legal parlance, is known as slander, which is a subset of defamation when it's spoken, and also false light, and probably a bunch of other things, negligent misrepresentation, and a bunch of other things. But it will be interesting to see how these types of things sort through our legal system, because the people at the View they're imbeciles, first and foremost. We know this. But setting aside their imbecility, we're getting to be a culture of people that 50% or so, or whatever, that the left represents thinks that there's no rules for them, right? And we're going to cover this story in a little bit more detail. Welcome to GAMcast for July 27th, 2022. It is looks like an overcast day in Atlanta. And we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about some January 6th stuff. Biden, Kamala is now not only using pronouns, but giving a description. We're going to explain what that's all about. We're talking about whether or not Trump committed a crime, a bunch of other things if we can get to it. Probably, I think we've got Matt Al from yesterday in the can again today to cover up on that. But, folks, you cannot do this type of thing. Now, this is typically, we talked about it yesterday in the context of DeSantis. The left's new thing that they're running on is climate change, January 6th, and abortion. Now, that's not going to play out very well for them, and so far polling, although it's tightening in the Senate a little bit, folks, tightening in the Senate out there. I went over to our friends at 538 today and saw that for the first time they have the Democrats favored to keep the Senate. So watch out for that, folks. This stuff, it should not be effective, but it is. But anyway, so they've decided that they're going to run basically on Republicans are extremists and evil. And so, of course, they're going to run up the flagpole this nonsense about Republicans favor neo-Nazis and Nazis. Now, folks, this thing ought to be as dead as fried chicken anytime somebody shows up at a rally. I mean, no one in their right mind objectively is going to support these people. No one. And in fact, we should have evolved to the point in society where somebody suggests that you ought to roll your eyes and that person ought to be ostracized from the political conversation. And instead, not only is that not the case, you have imbeciles on The View, right, when it's been debunked, and Turning Point USA says, hey, those people were outside on public property. We don't have anything to do with them. You got Whoopi lying. And again, folks, they may well get sued here. I mean, this is the type of thing that the court system is slow to react, but they are starting to catch up on that. That is classic defamation. You cannot do that. Now, truth would be a defense, but again, anybody with any intelligence knows there's no truth to it. Turning Point USA, I think, is a conservative group associated with Jack Posobiec. They don't want anything to do with neo-Nazis. Well, as it turns out, that was yesterday. Today, they issued a new statement. Let's see if they cleared any of this up. Here's The View today versus The View yesterday, which you just heard. Here's The View today.
So on Monday, we talked about the fact that there were openly neo-Nazi demonstrators outside the Florida Student Action Summit of the Turning Point USA group. We want to make clear that these demonstrators were gathered outside the event and that they were not invited or endorsed by Turning Point USA.
Shouldn't have to be said, folks. Shouldn't have to be said. I mean, and again, there used to be a time when we weren't insane in this country. You could go up to somebody and go, do you support these people? No, I don't. Okay, fine. Why is it? Oh, well, then why are they here? But you said this 10 years ago, and therefore that means you support them. What? That's not the way any of this should have worked.
Turning Point USA spokesman said the group, quote, 100% condemns those ideologies. And
now, see, again, there we play the game of once you start condemning, well, you did condemn them 100%, but I would have liked 101. Oh, you did condemn them 101, but most people that really are against them go 105%, and so on and so forth.
Turning Point USA security tried to remove the neo-Nazis from the area, but could not because they...
So now you've got to try to remove them. I mean, you see where this is going? It never ends. It's like the January 6th committee. we just keep on lying, and then when you debunk this lie, we'll tell another lie, and so on and so forth.
Public property. Also, Turning Point USA wanted us to clarify that this was a Turning Point USA summit and not a Republican Party event. So we apologize for anything we said that may have been unclear on these points.
They still haven't retracted it, folks. So legally speaking, they are still in the crosshairs of Turning Point, and I hope Turning Point turns up the screws, no pun intended there. So here is the President of the United States. He had this to say, and I talk about this all the time, this environment that we're in, we can't do anything about it, okay? So we covered the January 6th committee last Thursday where they told this lie of 187 minutes. I then did, I can't remember now, I do so much content I forget, but I think on Monday we did a single issue podcast on the YouTube. It's also on the Rumbles. We don't forget about you folks, Rumbles. We love you. But that you can get, and we basically debunked the 187 minutes. Basically, in order to get to 107 minutes, one, you have to start the immediately upon him saying peacefully and patriotically, to literally start the old clock on 60 minutes, the old stopwatch. You got to start it then, which is not a right place to start it, because the time you should start it would be the time that Trump knew that there was violence, which he couldn't have known until after 2 p.m. that we talk about that. Then you also have to ignore 2 tweets that he sent, one within 10, 12 minutes, saying, hey, be peaceful, right? And then finally, you have to ignore the fact that, which I've talked about many times, right, the last person that wanted violence was Trump. But if you do all that in some magical, mystical universe, you get to 187 minutes. Now, folks, this is the problem with the Democrats. And again, I'm not going to blame Biden so much. I mean, he looks like he's dazed and confused, which, again, I know I repeat myself. But he has a bunch of handlers. He just, he's like the guy that, I forget the name of the movie right now, but who would read anything on the teleprompter, the anchorman. Anyway, so he just reads whatever on the teleprompter. But the problem is people like Ron Klain and all these other people either know they'll be covered in the media and they can lie, or B, never listen to any other news sources, so they actually believe the lies. Anyway, here's the President of the United States.
Then on January 6th, we relied on law enforcement to save our democracy. We saw what happened. The Capitol Police.
Again, I'm sorry. Folks, there was a 4.5-hour disturbance. Any way you look at it, that's fact, on January 6th. If you're telling me that our quote-unquote democracy, which we're not, we're a democratic republic, but if quote-unquote whatever you want to call this form of government goes down because a couple of people have zip ties and a Viking helmet, then the sooner it goes down, the better.
The D.C. Metropolitan Police, other law enforcement agencies were attacked and assaulted before our very eyes, speared, sprayed.
Nobody was speared. I think people were sprayed.
Stomped on, brutalized, and lives were lost.
No lives were lost. Not one single solitary life of law enforcement. The only life lost was Ashley Babbitt. Okay? So anyway, again, more lies that they just continue to tell with abandon. We are now, a year and a half and still telling it.
And for 3 hours, the defeated former President of the United States watched it all happen as he sat in the comfort of the private dining room next to the Oval Office. While he was doing that, brave law enforcement officer subject to the medieval hell for 3 hours.
Medieval hell? Folks,
dripping in blood, surrounded by carnage. Face to face with crazed mob that believed the lies of the defeated president. The police were heroes that day. Donald Trump lacked the courage to act.
See, again, where do we learn to talk like this? Right? Who writes this? I want you to understand, folks, this was written. People reviewed it. They probably went through several people and then gets to the teleprompter. Who thinks or writes like this? Folks, this is not a game. This is governance. This is the President of the United States of America.
The brave women and men in blue all across this nation should never forget that. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-cop. You can't be pro-insurrection.
So that's the message he wants to get across, folks. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-cop. Yeah, it's the Republicans that are anti-cop. We all know this. And it's the Democrats that are pro-cop and pro-police. So, again, folks, how they're closing the gap, I don't know. But anyway, I got sent this, a friend of the show. Folks, I play this just because we have new people tuning in all the time. And so, maybe people haven't heard this. But, folks, if you've been following Biden's career, and I have, My entire life, I followed his entire career, in fact. Okay, I remember from way back when he was the Senate Judiciary Chairman. That's when he really came to prominence nationally. He's been a person that lacks compunction from beginning until just that little bit there, which is in the last day or two. This is what he is. But anytime he would ever show his true colors on the campaign trail, even during the 2020 cycle, this is who he was. Here's him interacting with a voter.
And I can get things done. That's why I'm running. And you want to check my shape on, let's do push-ups together, man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do. Let's do Number two. No one has said my son has done anything wrong, and I did not on any occasion. And no one has ever said it. Not
I
one.
didn't say you were doing anything wrong.
You said I set up my son to work in an oil company. Isn't that what you said? Get your words straight, Jack.
That's what I hear on MSNBC.
You don't hear that in MSNBC. You did not hear that. But you heard. Look, okay, I'm not going to get in an argument with you, man.
Well, I don't want to.
Well, yeah, you do. But look, Fat, look, here's the deal.
Anyway, I'm not going to let this continue to go on, but he calls the guy fat. He calls him ugly. He says he's too old, right? Get your facts straight. I mean, folks, listen, we used to be the kind of country where Democrat, Republican, it didn't matter. If you showed that type of temperament, you sunk like a rock to the bottom of the ocean. That's just how it was. And the reason it was is because people would understand that this is not the proper temperament of the type of person that should be out there. We now have a media environment that, and you have to understand too, there's something that says about the Democrat Party. You have a media environment that covers it, but this is inside the Democrat Party. So you also have to understand that the Democrat Party, this is not the first time they've closed ranks. They closed ranks to keep Crazy Bernie out in 2016. So if you're you people out there that think or, were raised to believe or still hold to the belief that the Democrat Party is somehow, quote unquote, democratic or somehow virtuous, give me a break. I mean, Biden proves both to be false. So anyway, here's Kamala Harris. And I put this in the stack only because, folks, if you don't understand how extreme the Democrat Party is, it's only because of this media environment where you don't see it. And there are a lot of people, I get it, it's their team, I mean, it would be hard for me to stop watching the Dallas Cowboys. I admit it, I mean, thank God a bunch of those guys didn't kneel. That would have been a tough decision for me. But, it'd be hard, but I would do it, right? But a lot of people, they just have their team, and so they want to be willfully ignorant that this stuff's going on, but it is. These people have been taken over by the mob. They just have. I mean, look, folks, you don't have to form the January 6th committee. Pelosi is an evil person. She didn't have to do that. She could have negotiated with McCarthy. She didn't have to do the committee A, right? Then B, she decides to do the committee. And then McCarthy basically says, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to give you any minority representation, right? She didn't have to play the gambit that she played, right? She could have said, okay, well, all right, well, how about this or that, or negotiated something else, right? But no, she figured, screw it, I'll just take the chance the courts won't strike it down, and we'll go forward. And so what we've done is we've moved more into crazy town. How? Because you're getting away with not having to be realistic. You don't have any impeachment or people from the other side, so you get to say crazier. I mean, they literally just ran their latest hearing was a complete fabricated lie about 187 minutes, and they have to ignore a lot of facts to get there. And now you got the President of the United States repeating that. Now, Pelosi, if she had any common sense, would have known, yeah, it's probably not a good idea. Maybe I should try to call McCarthy and figure out, some way for him to get some people on there so we have some kind of impeachment, some kind of cross-examination to keep that thing in the road so we don't get a mob we can't control, right? That's what happens. I mean, sooner or later they get around to you. But anyway, the Democrat Party for a long time has just let the mob rule things. So this is what the mob believes in, and so now you have to do that. Here's Kamala Harris. And again, they're sitting around somewhere. It looks like they're in the White House or whatever the vice president's residence is. It doesn't matter. They're all masked, every single solitary one of them recently. They're all masked. Some of them are cloth masks. So don't give me any of this K95 or M95 or whatever 95 it is. I don't want to hear about it, right? Anyway, they're all masked, and this is how they introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. I want to welcome these leaders for coming in to have this very important discussion about some of the most pressing issues of our time. I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit. And
And they all go around and do the same thing. So, folks, we've already been brought into the reality of whose truth are we talking about here. So we got different truths. So then we got pronouns. All right. Then we got what's a woman, so she identifies herself as a woman, right? Now we have to be told she's wearing a blue suit. Now, I saw this about 6 months ago. It started to make its way on the scene where you actually had to define the truth of the clothes you wear, right? The color and what it is. I mean, I guess I might think it's a skirt, or I might think it's a blouse, even though it's clearly a suit and it's clearly the color blue, right? That's where we are. And this is what anybody, again, just like I said before with the Democrat Party, this is where it goes, right? It starts and then it just continues to go, right? And that's where we're headed, right? We're pretty soon, we're not going to have truth of what 2 + 2 is. We're not going to have truth of subject and verb and adverb and anyway, you get the idea. So here's Glenn Kirshner over there at the Lincoln Project. Lincoln Project, I bring it up for a couple reasons. One, it turns out that the Department of Justice recently has leaked out. Again, another felony. I told you yesterday, every time you hear the word leak and associated with a federal government employee of any kind or department or branch or any kind, you should hear the word felony. Okay, so there's been a felony leak from the DOJ that apparently they are looking into potential crimes to charge people like Trump with. Now, this is playing a bit here in a moment from Glenn Kirshner. He's part of the group over there, the Lincoln Project. I debunked the Lincoln Project from the beginning. I've been doing social media since August of 2020, and I called them right off the bat. They claimed, first and foremost, whether the Lincoln Republicans were just some good, original Republicans like Lincoln. We believe in free markets, free soil, all this type of thing, the freedom of the Republican Party, and we're the real Republicans, and it's a reaction to Trumpism is what it is. Now, I called it then. I said, no. They're just a new group. They're a bunch of ostracized Republicans that are trying to raise money off good, decent Republicans who are lost their way for whatever reason, and a bunch of anti-Trump Democrats will give them money. That's all it is. Turns out they raised a lot of money. They were in trouble for about 2 minutes when it found out that they were not spending the money on the things they were supposed to, and they were using it to do nefarious things with underage kids and whatnot. All this other stuff, it came out. Anyway, nobody cared. And now it's pretty clear they're pretty much anti-Republican. I mean, they run ads where they're pretty much just from the very beginning, they're basically a bunch of Democrats. But I want you to listen to Glenn Kirshner because this is the type of environment we live in where basically a bunch of Democrats can form a group that's supposed to be the proper Republicans, go out there, raise a lot of money, get a social media presence, get influence, and then turn that influence into, an anti-Republican group out there. And then when they come out with the message, you can tell they're Democrats because they communicate in the same way that Democrats communicate, which is in Democrat world, you just get to say something and then it becomes true. You don't actually ever have to prove anything. If you say it and you say it with emotion and passion, it becomes true. So we're going to listen to Glenn Kirshner. And the reason I know that Kirshner's lying about this is because he was a prosecutor under Obama. He spent years and years and years doing this. He knows darn well most everything he's saying here is not true. I also know that it's true and not true and that he's lying because I'm going to pull this up in a moment. I wrote an article on April 30th, 2022 that's up at our Substack page, greatamericanmail.substack.com, greatamericanmail.substack.com, April the 30th. I wrote an article about this, debunking the very thing that he brings up. But he's following up, excuse me, I still have a little bit of this cold, folks, the Department of Justice crimes. Take a listen.
It leaves no room for doubt that Donald Trump, and we can get to his criminal associates if you like, but Donald Trump has committed any number of offenses against the United States. For openers, we have a federal judge in California, David Carter, who has already ruled by a preponderance of the evidence after some litigation about whether John Eastman, one of Trump's treasonous lawyers, should be allowed to bury his emails and his communications with Trump. Judge David Carter ruled, no, he doesn't get to hide that from the J6 committee or the American people because he was involved in a criminal conspiracy with Donald Trump, and therefore the crime fraud exception to the attorney-client privilege yields. It goes away. It evaporates. Judge Carter ruled by by a preponderance of the evidence.
All right, so I'm going to stop him there. I'm going to let him finish. But anyway, folks, what's the first problem with this? The first problem with this is, for a crime, you need beyond a reasonable doubt. Preponderance of the evidence is a civil standard, and it's a much lower standard. It's not even close. You're not even the same ballpark. You can't even see the ballpark, right? You've gotten off the train, and you're walking the miles and miles and miles before you even see the ballpark if you're talking preponderance to beyond a reasonable doubt. He knows that. That's been drilled into his head. He knows darn well that's true, right? And when did David Carter do that? Well, if you're watching on the YouTube, sorry, I clicked the wrong thing there. You're looking at my article, which if you go to the article, it was published on April the 30th, greatamericanmail.substack.com. You scroll midway down, you click right here, David Carter's opinion comes up. And you can see here in blue, it was issued on March 28th, 2022. So if the J6 committee presented this evidence to Judge Carter, and Judge Carter found by a preponderance of the evidence that a crime was committed, you think the Department of Justice hadn't had a sufficient time to investigate that and determine, oh, it's not just a preponderance, sir. Why, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Why, we can prove it. Why, there's not even a problem. I mean, there's no penalty if we prosecute you and, you know what, the jury says not guilty. We shrug and go, well, juries get it wrong all the time. It's not our fault. We did our job. I mean, there's no downside here, right? We're talking fully 4 months later, no charges, no nothing. What's he talking about? And again, if you want to read my article, you can. But long story short, he finds 2 crimes, basically obstruction of Congress and another one, both of which are just garbage crimes. They're not crimes at all. They're basically political persecutions. Now, the crime fraud exception that he found there was that Eastman was engaged in a crime with Trump. Now, we all know what the January 6th committee is about. But again, this environment persists. And until this environment is dealt with in this country, you're going to continue to get nonsense like this. I mean, this is persuasive. I mean, this stuff will be retweeted and liked and all this. Let's let him finish up.
Evidence, which is an important standard in the criminal law, that Donald Trump...
Yeah, preponderance of the evidence is an important standard in a criminal law. Please.
John Eastman committed 2 federal felonies. They obstructed an official proceeding, the certification of Joe Biden's win, and they were in what we call a 371 conspiracy together, a conspiracy to defraud or commit offenses against the United States.
Which is also a garbage crime. Anybody, you don't even need to be a lawyer to know that anytime you start, you're criminally obstructing a proceeding by doing that which the proceeding permits you to do. I've said this many times. That's exactly the same if I get charged in a crime in Fulton County, which is also investigating Trump, by the way, and I go in there and they say, how do you plead? I said, no, you're obstructing this proceeding. That is literally what they're talking about. And the reason they can get away with it is they get to live in this environment where they say something and it's true. And they never have to hear from anybody from the other side. I said it many times. The January 6th committee is precisely what Democrats think government should be. That they should be able to say whatever they want, no impeachment, no, it's all in secrecy. They don't have to show you anything. They'll show you whatever they decide to show you. That's what it is. Kirshner is just lying to his friends out there. There's nothing to any of that, and we likely will. Well, we don't know whether Trump will be indicted or not. Right now, I give it about a 50-50. In Fulton County, I've got it at about 75%. I think it's highly likely. Just because she's got no downside. She's got years and years and years before she has to run again. This is a very popular thing for her to do. It makes no sense because as a citizen, I want her to actually focus on crime and not chase non-crimes, which are clearly not crimes. But who knows? We shall see. Again, the reason I think it'll happen, it may not happen before November, but I believe it will happen just because there's no downside. Unfortunately, there's no downside. I mean, the only potential downside is that he's found not guilty. And again, folks, I've been in this industry for a long time. People will just shrug and go, well, juries get it wrong all the time. What do you want from me? Right? And there's no downside. There's a lot of upside. They'll get a lot. People will do it. Will be called heroes. They'll get a lot of adulation. They'll be able to raise a lot of money. They'll be famous for the rest of their lives. They'll be able to write books. I mean, you think about it, folks. The Fulton County DA, no matter what happens, if she were to prosecute Trump, no matter what happens, guilty, not guilty, doesn't matter. She'll get a book deal. She'll get a job in the Biden administration. She'll be given a professorship and making millions of dollars a year. There's no downside. In fact, there's every bit of upside for her to do that. So we shall see what happens. So I saw this bit out here. I thought that was actually kind of funny. So for those of you listening, this person is dressed up as a stereotypical maracas, a Mexican singer. He's got the big hat. He's got the maracas. He's literally taped on a big Mexican stereotypical mustache, and he interviews a couple of kids, and then he goes over, after he interviews the kids about their opinion about whether or not they like his outfit, then he goes over and he interviews some actual Mexicans in Mexico. Anyway, take a listen. For those of you watching on the YouTubes and the Rumbles, you'll get it right away. So anyway, take a listen.
My outfit is offensive?
Are you Mexican?
No.
Yes.
I think it reaffirms stereotypes that are offensive to people.
It's not yours.
Do you find my outfit offensive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's not your culture?
You don't really understand what their culture means and what it means to wear these things, like the hats and the maracas. You sort of have to understand where all of this comes from for it to not be cultural appropriation.
Does my outfit offend you?
No. You look nice.
Do you like my costume?
Yes.
Does it offend you?
No.
Do you like my outfit?
Oh, yeah, it's awesome.
Does my outfit offend you?
No, not at all.
No.
No, nothing. That's good.
My outfit is offensive.
Anyway, I just thought it was good for a chuckle, but this is again where the Democrat Party resides, and there's a couple points in this bit. One, they reside in their own reality. There's this thing called cultural appropriation. And the best example I've ever seen of it is, the Washington Redskins and the Atlanta Braves and all this stuff. I mean, I grew up with these. I mean, my uncle, one of the reasons I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan is my uncle was a Washington Redskin fan. And I think I just picked the Cowboys just because, to be on the other side of him watching ball games. And then, I grew up an Atlanta Braves fan because we got cable in Charlotte. And back then it was Channel 17, the Superstation. And it got that and a Chicago channel got brought in. And so it was kind of weird, like, wow, I can watch the local, Atlanta station. And back then, I think they covered almost every single game the Braves played, including the minor league games, folks. So I just became a huge fan of the Braves. And it never, not one single solitary time in my life, did I ever imagine that we were using the term Braves in a derogatory fashion. In fact, it always occurred to me that it was the opposite, that it was a celebration of the Brave, that we wanted to be like the Braves, right? And so you could go on with Redskins and all the rest. But, people invent this type of stuff, and then you get to a point where people invent it, and then you go to the actual people, and they go, yeah, no, we're not offended. That doesn't matter. You don't know what the hell you're talking about, right? And that's just the way it is. And the best example, I went to Florida State for law school, and so, down there, they were good back then. I mean, we were perennial power. We won, I think we won one national title while I was there, and then one a couple years after I left. And so it was hard not to get, caught up in the football there. And we had, obviously a Seminole that would come out and do a lot of things. And the local Seminole tribe blesses all of that. And still to this day, despite the fact that the tribe's fine with it, people are offended. But it is where we are. So anyway, turns out Cassidy Hutchinson, there's a report out there by Molly Hemingway and Tristan Justice, our friends over there at the Federalist. And I'm a huge Molly Hemingway fan. Don't get a chance to retweet and I don't do a lot of retweeting, but anyway, read her stuff as much as I used to. But anyway, she is somebody I would highly recommend you follow on Twitter or read her over at thefederalist.com, thefederalist.com, Molly Hemingway. Exclusive in private, Cassidy Hutchinson joked about riot, called J6 committee phony, praised Trump before changing her story. So this is interesting. And so basically they've gotten their little hot hands on some of Cassidy Hutchinson's tweets out there. And it turns out that originally she was very much against the January 6th committee. So anyway, you can read the article for yourself, but I thought I'd bring you back. And originally when I covered her, and she appeared at the 6th hearing, which, as you know, I live streamed all 8 of them, and so I covered the 6th one as well. In fact, I think the 6th one, I got the most views of any of them so far. So anyway, here's Cassidy Hutchinson, my analysis when she testified this way on January 6th, during the January 6th committee's 6th hearing, was that she was an anti-Trumper. Take a listen to the testimony that I thought was most pertinent. That to me, she impeaches herself with this testimony that she's clearly, got some, TDS or something like that. But anyway, here's Cassidy Hutchinson.
Ms. Hutchinson, do you recall seeing this tweet in which the president said the vice president did not have the courage to do what needed to be done?
I do.
And Ms. Hutchinson, what was your reaction when you saw this tweet?
As a staffer that works to always represent the administration to the best of my ability and to showcase the good things that he had done for the country, I remember feeling frustrated, disappointed, and really, it felt personal. It was really sad. As an American, I was disgusted. It was unpatriotic. It was un-American. We were watching the Capitol building get defaced over a lie.
Oh, wow.
And it was something that was really
Boom.
hard in that moment to digest, knowing what I'd been hearing down the hall in the conversations that were happening, seeing that tweet come up and knowing what was happening on the Hill. And it's something that I still struggled to work through the emotions of that.
Wow. So look, folks, this is bombshell. Now, they think it's bombshell for them, that. Folks, what I just heard is now the third time, maybe the fourth, she's impeached herself. So now it felt personal. As an American, I was disgusted. It was unpatriotic. Capitol is disgraced over a lie. This is a partisan person for whatever reason. Maybe it's PTSD. Maybe she was in on it. Who knows? Anyway, I'm sure you recognize that voice as mine. That was my analysis at the time. And I think it was a good analysis based on what I knew. I mean, you heard her voice. For those of you who are watching, you saw her. She seemed actually very, very genuine in what she had to say. But when you read through these various texts, so here's one. Other than a handful of irrelevant text, I have literally no documents or anything they're asking about. She said here that we were effed by Benny Thompson, right? She joked that he would be sending her a letter, her to jail, and hoped another friend would come visit her. In text published by the Daily Caller earlier this month, she called the panel's probe, quote, BS. So now when I hear that same testimony, which I just listened with you again, I pulled that up from my live stream. Now, this is something far worse than having TDS. Now it's somebody who understands she's got to have a struggle session and understands what that struggle session's got to be. Now, listen, I'm not blaming her. She's got to do what she's got to do to keep her butt out of jail. You saw what happened to Bannon and see what they're doing to other people. But folks, this is just one more problem the January 6th committee is causing in our country. So now you're getting people to get out there and crisis act for us. It's not remotely genuine at all, right? And this is a 25-year-old person who, I don't know why she went to government. Maybe it was fortune and fame. Maybe she actually wanted to help serve her country. And look at what she's learning by doing that. That if the political opposition takes over, you're supposed to go up there and demean yourself in front of the committee and do a struggle session. So anyway, check out that story. Cassidy Hutchinson apparently is a fraud. And so what brings us back where we were yesterday, I have 7 minutes, almost 7 minutes. So I didn't expect to finish the show that quickly. But a lot of you complained. And listen, if you email me or you get in touch with me some other way, if you follow me on Twitter at @male_American, remember it's MAIL, not MALE. I have no restrictions at all. I've got that little button. You can click on it and you can DM me anytime you want, and I will read them, okay? If you want to email me, it's publius@GAMcast.net, publius@GAMcast.net, PUBLIUS. I read every single solitary email. So anyway, a lot of you complained and said I really pushed it too far yesterday and saying you got cheated. You didn't get cheated. You know the story. You already know it, but let's go ahead and finish it and cover it in a little more detail so everybody's happy. I want everybody to be feeling like they're not getting cheated. I don't like that. So anyway, what the point I was trying to make is that they're going to now try to tie people like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz or these other. It doesn't matter who it is, folks. It's all a grift. It's all a joke, right? Anyway, they're going to make this new thing. Christian nationalism is a new thing, and it's bad, and Christians are bad, even though like the last thing this country needs is less Christians. But anyway, Let's continue. This is right where we left off the story yesterday, okay? She's talking about Gerald K. Smith, former Republican, also was in various other parties, which demonstrates that he was a fringe figure. Whatever, he had this idea. She continues.
If Gerald L.K. Smith is remembered for anything today, it's probably mostly for this. This is a statue that he erected in Arkansas in the 1960s. It's called Christ of the Ozarks. Christ of the Ozarks was the subject of a suspiciously huge fundraising operation by Gerald L.K. Smith. He died in 1976, but that statue still stands in Arkansas today. But Gerald L.K. Smith is about to have another moment in the public eye, because what he really wanted to be remembered for, even more than that statue, was a nationwide movement that he tried to build. A movement that he named and that he led and that he promoted tirelessly and that he wanted to outlive him forever.
Motive behind the term Christian nationalist is easy to define and simple to interpret. We believe that the destiny of America in relationship to its governing authority must be kept in the hands of our own people. We must never be governed by aliens. We must keep control of our own money and our own blood. In other words,
Anyway, she goes on about this, and there's really nothing to it. Okay, it's just typical, somebody that believed that Americans shouldn't be infiltrated by foreign people and this, that, and the other. It's just garbage. But the reason I wanted you to know, now you've heard a little bit more of it. Trust me, you didn't miss anything yesterday. The point is, they're trying to make Christian somehow a problem. You should be scared of Christians, even though Lars, as I can tell, Christians aren't doing anything wrong out there. And you should especially be afraid of Christians who want to sort of nationalize or promote Christianity. Not to mention, think about all the things that we've heard today they're promoting and they want to nationalize, but there's no problem there. But anyway, so you're going to be hearing a lot more of this, in the lead up to November. Anyway, but be aware for that. It's just more, neo-Nazis at campaigns, same type of stuff, different name. Anyway, you're now all caught up to date on the news of the day. And if you like this live stream, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.